thank you so much for joining us.
Well, Alex, thank you very much for having me on, and my best to your viewing audience.
Thank you, sir. You've got the floor. Go ahead and tell us what you think's going on here.
Well, of course, I have no inside information. I've just been dealing with reputable news media sources from around the world, but it does seem to me and to others, another expert friend of mine, that what we are dealing with here is some type of biowarfare agent that has been genetically modified, GMO. So for that reason, you really can't believe anything the WHO, the Pan American Health Organization, the CDC is telling you. It also appears, as you correctly point out, that Gates was involved in this. Bill Engdahl has the book on Gates that he's basically a genocidalist. He does have people on his staff with experience having done what I call death science, life scientists who do biowarfare work. It appears that the U.S. Advanced Biowarfare Facility at Galveston was involved. It also appears that the BSL-4 facility at Colorado State that works with GMOing mosquitoes was involved, and that this British high-tech firm Oxitec was involved. What is critical here is that I believe it was the summer of 2004, there was a scholarly paper published saying that these genetically modified mosquitoes could be dangerous if they were released. And despite this knowledge, they were released both in Brazil and also in Colombia, deliberately and maliciously. Now, why Brazil and Colombia? Brazil, you hit the Atlantic coast of Latin America, and Colombia, you hit the Pacific coast of Latin America, and you set off a pandemic. So as of now, I think that's what's going on. I'll continue to monitor the situation and, act in accordance with the best information I have. But I don't think you should trust anything the CDC, the WHO, the Pan American Health Organization is telling you. They're all in cahoots with Gates. The Brazilian government is in cahoots with Gates. They're all up to their eyeballs in this stuff. Right now, I personally would not be traveling down to Latin America until we have some idea precisely what we are dealing with. And yet I note on Monday, the WHO has convened an emergency meeting where they're going to tell everyone, well, just keep business and travel as usual. I take it they got those instructions from the CDC, and we know full well the nefarious role that the CDC, the WHO, played in the Black West African Ebola pandemic. You and I have already been through that, so I'm not going to go through that here all over again. But it's a very dangerous situation. In fact, another biowarfare expert, formerly the United States government, that I am working with my approval, has informed the administration of the University of Illinois that we don't believe anyone should be traveling down to Latin America for any reason until we know precisely what is going on here. This so-called Zika is also transmitted by sexual intercourse, which I think proves that we have a GMO'd biowarfare agent at work here. And it is also transmitted by saliva. And that indicates to me that we could be dealing with some type of GMO gain of function biowarfare agent, namely that it could jump. I don't know. I'm continuing to monitor the situation, see what I can. But under the circumstances, that's the best I can give you, Alex.
Insects with modified DNA have never come this close to being set loose in a residential neighborhood. But that could all be changing, especially if you live down in the Florida Keys. We're just learning that the FDA is now considering an experiment by British researchers that would allow for the release of millions of genetically modified mosquitoes into the area, all in the hopes of stopping the spread of deadly viruses. The two being focused on here are chikungunya and dengue, which can cause a high fever and severe pain in the head and muscles. Those are both expected to pose a greater risk to Americans in the coming years. So the question is, how exactly does this work? Well, researchers with the biotech firm Oxitec are genetically modifying these mosquitoes by breeding them with fragments of genes from things like E. coli bacteria and cabbage. They focus on doing this particularly in male mosquitoes, and then they release them to mate with wild female mosquitoes. The idea there is that the offspring of that combination would die and thereby significantly reduce the overall mosquito population. Now, researchers say the experiment would mimic what was already done back in 2012 in the Cayman Islands. 3.3 million genetically modified mosquitoes were released there, and within 6 months, the wild mosquito population reduced by 96%. But experiments like that haven't quite convinced all Americans that the same should happen here. In fact, over 138,000 people have already signed a change.org petition calling on the FDA to stop this Florida experiment from going through. A lot of people are associating this latest initiative with genetically modified crops, which have gained a lot of criticism in recent years. The petition points to the prominence of genetically modified crops and how their cultivation eventually resulted in unintended consequences, particularly for humans. They worry about what might happen if one of these DNA-altered mosquitoes bites them. After all, most of the research that's been conducted has been done by the company overseeing this, Oxitec. And activists say nothing should go through until more third-party, peer-reviewed research can be done. The question now is whether the FDA will listen to public opinion. If not, Florida Keys residents could see their new genetically modified neighbors move in by the spring. Reporting in Washington, Amira David, RT.